but a kind of barrier. So when we think about the barrier, barrier is nothing but when we communicate to each other, it may be in personal or professional life, we tend to face the barriers, obstacles into the communication, due to which we are not able to get the intended message by the sender. So when we are thinking about the barriers, barriers could be there on the part of the sender or the part of the receiver. As you know, when the process of communication goes on, there is a transmission phase and there is a feedback phase. So it can exist in a transmission phase also, it can exist in feedback phase also, it can also exist in the any one of the elements. When you are putting the message, when you are transferring it, when the receiver is receiving it. So barrier can exist in any of the elements when we are involved in the process of communication. So we'll see some of the types of the barriers, and by learning these barriers, what you have to do or what you have to learn, so that you will not create a barrier, and if the barrier exists in the process of communication, you have to remove it. So that is the purpose by which you can learn how to remove the barrier. So as soon as I will tell you what is the barrier and how to overcome from that barrier. So this is very simple. As soon as you will come to know there is the existence of the barrier, you have to stop immediately and remove that barrier so that you will be successful. Right? Sometimes it may be possible that you are not creating the barrier as a sender or a receiver. So there is the responsibility of a sender or the receiver to understand this. Okay, but if you do come to know about the barrier on your part, you can certainly remove it. Okay, so let's see in detail what are the barriers of communication. So basically we are learning about the few types of the barriers here. It's not possible to cover up every kind of the barrier, but the major barriers which can exist into the communication process, we can analyze them. So the first type of the barrier is known as physical or environmental barrier. Then the second, mechanical barrier. Third, semantic barriers. Fourth, psychological barriers. 5, interpersonal barriers. 6, organizational barriers. And 7, cross-cultural barriers. So basically these are the types of the barriers we are learning today. So coming to the barriers here. So the first category of the barrier is known as physical or environmental barrier. So this particular barrier is known as environmental barrier because it can exist into the environment, into the process of communication. So as you can see the image here, here the process of communication is mentioned here. I can highlight something. So when you are involved into the transmission phase, so as a message, when you are sending it or encoding it, it can exist here also, or anywhere in the process of communication, right? So that is known as environmental barrier. So when we're thinking about the environmental barrier, first we will be learning about the noise. So noise could be physical as well as psychological. It could be also technical. It could be human error as well. So noise is a very common barrier. It could be easily identified as a sender or receiver. So let's see what is noise barrier and how it could exist in the process of communication. So when we think about a noise, it is a very common barrier and it may occur due to the technical errors or human errors as well. So how it will come as a human error or technical error, let's see. So noise means any unplanned inference in the process of communication, and that particular barrier is known as noise. For an example, when you are talking one-to-one to your friends and outside of your house, if there is a speaker and there is a function and the volume of the speaker is increased so loud that you couldn't communicate to each other. So that could be a physical noise which will exist in the process of communication, right? So this is unplanned activity. You didn't plan it, but abruptly it came. It could also exist in faulty phone lines if you are talking to the friends and there is a problem with the transmission phase. It could be due to the machines which are transmitting the message, and it could lead to create a barrier so you couldn't listen to each other carefully. So there will be call drop or noisy faulty background into the transmission phase and lead to create the noise barrier, right? So that is known as noise barrier. So there are categories of the noise. We can say first category of the noise barrier is known as channel noise. So why it is known as channel noise? Let's see. So any inference in the mechanics of the medium used to send a message is known as noise barrier. So for an example, faulty background. For an example, it could be faulty background due to any one's interruptions being created willingly or unwillingly. Noise in the telephone lines, which is a transmission phase or mechanical barrier, we can call it, right? Or too high volume of the loudspeaker could create a barrier into your process of communication. So basically, we could use all these things. Mediums can be used to transfer the message from one place to the other, and we are using it as a channel. And when the barrier exists in that channel, it could be known as a channel noise or channel barrier, right? So this is a physical barrier, we can say, or environmental barrier. Then the second category of the noise is semantic noise. Now, what is semantics? First of all, we have to learn the meaning of it. So whenever you communicating in a written format and you couldn't understand the meaning of that particular word term which is used by a writer. So semantics is the study of the meanings of the words, right? So this is a branch of the linguistic. So it pertains to the meaning of the words and concerned with the written communication. So in the written communication, if you are receiving a message and you are not able to understand the term which is mentioned into the sentence or into the message, that could lead to create a barrier that is known as semantic noise. So it could generally result in internally from the errors in the message itself. So as a sender, he has a false assumption about you that you know that particular term, and he sent that message which is faulty one, right? So the term, the word which are used into that particular message, the code which is used into that message is unable to understood by you, unable to be understood by you, right? So that is known as a semantic noise. So there could be the categories of different semantics like illegible handwriting, right? Some of the times when the doctors are writing the prescriptions, we couldn't read any one of the words, right? So that could be leading to the creating the barrier. So we committing the spelling mistakes and couldn't understand what is being written there, right? So that could be leading to the semantic noise. Then sometimes incorrect sentence structure. It may be written in a sentence, but incorrect sentence structure could also lead to create a barrier because you couldn't understand it fully. Then grammatical errors could also lead to create a barrier. So there are so many examples we can see in the next coming slides, which lead to create a semantic barrier. We'll let you know later on. Then the second barrier, which is known as environmental barrier or environmental stress, could also be known as the noise. So barriers due to the environment are called environmental barriers, right? So when the environment in which you are communicating is not suitable, so that could also lead to create a barrier. For an example, wrong choice of the font colors in a presentation. If you are attending a presentation where the presenter has used so many colors into the presentations and it's blurry, not able to, you are not able to see it, it may be typed in a very small characters or letters. So that also create a barrier to understand the message. So that is known as environmental stress. Sometimes it could also lead to the environment in which we are sitting. For an example, if you are sitting in a room and the temperature is high, right, or low, it also could lead to create a barrier in understanding. So when there is a high temperature or low temperature, we couldn't understand the message as we are busy in the thinking or having a problem while sitting there, right? Humidity, then bad ventilation also can create a barrier to get the messages, right? For an example, if you are sitting in a cinema hall and there is no system of the AC which is working, so it could not create a ventilation as well as the temperature of the room will increase. So you could not sit there longer and cannot watch the movie. So it will also create a barrier when you are watching that movie and understanding the messages, right? So that is known as environmental stress. Then apart from it, in the barrier, we can also have a physical stress when it comes to the environmental barriers, right? So physical stress due to the sleeplessness, ill health, consumption of the drugs, mental strain, tension, these also could lead to create a barrier into the communication. So suppose if you are not feeling well, if you have ill health, so that you wouldn't be able to sit the lectures for longer, right? And you couldn't concentrate on what the teacher is telling it to you, right? Then consumption of the drugs, sometimes the drugs which are consumed could also lead to create a barrier. And the mental strain, if you are in the tension, then it could also create a barrier into the process of communication. So the communicator cannot interpret the message in desired manner. As a receiver, if you are there, or as a sender also, you couldn't be able to deliver the message effectively, right? Then the second category of the barriers is known as mechanical barriers. So these barriers are based on because of which the barriers are coming into the process of communication. So when we are learning about the mechanical barriers, let's see what a mechanical barrier is. A mechanical barrier stems from a problem in machinery or instruments used to transmit the message. As we know, we have to use multiple mediums and the channels to transfer the message from one place to the other place. So when you are transferring the message from one place to the other place, it could be a video, it could be the audio message. Then if the machine is at fault, so it could create a barrier, and that barrier could lead to not understand the message sent by you. So first, it is known as defects in machines. So defects in machinery like smeared ink on the printed matter, or rolling screen on the TV, or typing too small to be read in the newspaper could lead to create a barrier. We have a many a times experience of it. Like sometimes when the printed matter has a smeared ink, the ink has been sprayed on the several lines, you couldn't get the message of those words or sentences. In the rolling screen on the TV, when you have a rolling screen on the TV, you couldn't understand the message, the video message which is being sent to you, right? Sometimes the letters are very small to read in the newspaper, into the article, even in a legal documents also. We couldn't read them, or we just avoid to read them, right? Because there will be a heavy strain of it, and you have to use different ways to read it, like using several mediums to expand the image of the or expand the image or expand the content which is given there on the page. So this could also lead to create a barrier. So we will not read it and leave it, right? So many times when the terms and conditions are being mentioned by the company or organization, which you are bound to complete, they are typed in small characters or the letters. So people just avoid them, and when the question comes to have a claim of it, they just refer to those terms and conditions. You may have seen that example into the movie like we have many of the movies are there in which we can see the example of like this, right? So we tend to not read those messages or the content. So that could also create a barrier in understanding. Then in a mechanical barrier, we can see the transmission interruptions. So when transmitter interruption will occur, transmitted communication like emails, fax machines, papers, cell phones, radios, and satellite communication. If these devices or instruments are not functioning well, they could lead to create a false messages or faulty messages when being transmitted. So if this transmitter receives the interrupted signals, there is an interruption in receiving the messages. So whatever interruption would be there, it will be reflected into the receiving messages. Okay, so that could also lead to create a transmission interruption, and the receiver will not understand the message completely. Then again, semantic barriers. We already learned about the semantic barriers, but that semantic barrier pertain to the reading process. Here, the semantic barrier leads to the speaking process. Okay, so semantics is a systematic study of the meaning of the words. I already told you. Words are used as symbols to convey the message. So every word, every language consists of the symbols, and those symbols would be used to convey the message, as each word has some meaning attached to it. But when it considered the words, they don't have the same meaning in same environment. Even the same word will have a different meaning. when it is being used by the user in different situations. So words are meanings are attached to the words in a different situation, in a different manner. For an example, suppose if a student in your classroom attends all the lectures, solves all the problems, completes the assignments on time, and also answers. So we could say that this student is very punctual and intelligent as well. So this is where you can understand the message. But if a student bunking the classes, not turning the assignments on time, coming late, and we will say that this is a very intelligent student and punctual as well. So same statement in a different context could have a different meaning, right? So words don't have the fixed meanings. Even same word will have a different meaning in different scenario, right? So when those words would use in different scenario with a different intent would have a different meaning, the receiver cannot understand the message. So in every situation, we do not have the same meaning from the same word. The different meaning may block communication on both the sides, as a sender or as well as receiver. So I could give you an example here. Suppose if you are working into the organization and your boss asks you to prepare a bi-monthly report. Now the word here, which is highlighted in red ink, shows that bi-monthly will have two meanings. Do you know the meanings of the bi-monthly? If anyone knows, can tell me. What is the meaning of bi-monthly?
Every 2 months.
Yes,
Every 2 months.
every 2 months. Means he has to prepare a report in every 2 months. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, but bi-monthly also have a meaning twice a month, right? So as a boss, if he is telling you, you just assume the meaning that the report should be prepared every 2 months, means one report in a 2 month, but he was asking you to prepare a report, two reports in a month, right? So these different meaning with the same word are attached. So when there are meanings attached, a different word and opposite meanings are attached to the words, it would create a barrier in the form of communication, right? So that could lead to create a problem. So it could be every 2 months or twice a month. Both the meanings are attached to the words. So instead of using that term bi-monthly, the boss could use a word, prepare the report twice a month, right? So that could be a clear message which is sent to the receiver, right? So that is known as meaning with the words. So that's known as semantic barrier. Then apart from it, in semantics, we can also have a different languages, right? Even a language could also create a barrier in understanding. As we are not using a single language all over the world, and every language have a different forms of terms, rules, grammar. So that also creates a barrier when we are understanding the languages, right? Sometimes we are not able to understand the language of the speaker, and that also could create a barrier into the process of communication, right? So when it comes to languages, more than 6,500 languages are being spoken all over the world. So you can see the number, and we cannot learn them all, right? It's highly impossible for us. So we don't have a same word for the same object in every language because we don't have a one common language, and every language have different principles, different features, right? In any case, or in this case, people rely on non-verbal communication to convey their messages. When somebody is speaking you in a South Indian accent or the language, their native language, we cannot understand much, and we mostly rely on the non-verbal communication they are doing with us, right? So that also could create a barrier in the getting the message. So the best way is you should know that particular code or language. If you don't know it, we can't understand the message. Next, in semantic barrier, we can see use of jargons. So what is jargon? First of all, we will see. Jargon is a language full of technical or professional terms. So when we say virus, everybody is thinking about the computer virus. Very less number of the students are thinking that virus could also lead to diseases, right? So before 1950, when the virus word was used, they, the word was used solely used for any particular diseases which is caused by the virus. But nowadays, when we say that particular word, it is solely attached to the technical programming and that particular thing, right? So when we thinking about the jargon, when doctor is talking about the virus, he is talking about the different things or different terms. Where the computer programmer, IT engineer is talking about the virus, he is talking in a different term. So it means a jargon is a language full of technical or professional terms. So when two technical people are communicating before us, we are not tend to understand much because they are using a technical language. For an example, when you visit to the doctor and two doctors are talking about the problem which our relative is having, we are not understanding because they are using the jargon, the language full of technical terms, and they could understand it better using that particular language, but we are not able to understand, right? So sometimes it may possible that a sender, when he is communicating with you, uses those technical terms with you, and when he is using, he assumes that you know the meaning of that particular term, but you don't, and that time it will be leading to create the barrier. So it is a specialized vocabulary, specialized word of any particular profession. Every profession have these particular terms and terminologies attached to it, right? And if it is used to communicate with non-professional groups, there should be a confusion or misunderstanding. So this is very simple to understand, right? If you don't know the term, we can't understand the meaning of it, right? For an example, we could also have this particular problem. When any X person joins to the organization, as you can see the example here, an office manager gave his newly appointed clerk a letter with the instruction, take it to our storeroom and burn it. Now, pay attention to this particular term I'm highlighting here. So, burn it is the term. Nowadays, we don't use it, but in old age, it was used when the technology was in developing phase, right? So, what is the meaning of it? Can anyone tell me? Do you know the meaning of this particular term? This is attached to your technical field, computer, from computer or IT. Okay, you might not have seen the old PCs there. There were the term burn the CD. What it means? The burn means copy. Okay, so before this, the word was existence. Copy word was existence, but it was used solely. There is a reason behind it. But suppose if a newly appointed clerk doesn't know the meaning of it, burn it. And if the office manager gave him a document and asked that go to the storeroom and burn it, so simply will light it up and burn it, right? But he was asking him to take the copy or take the xerox of it. So burn was the meaning. Burn means to take the printout of or copy on the company machine, which was operated by the heat process. Heat process machines were there; those were operated on the heat process. So that's why the term was used, burn it. Nowadays we don't use those machines, so that's why we have a word copy, right? Or print. So if you don't know that particular meaning of that particular term, we could commit the problem, commit the mistake, right? And that's why when you're using the jargon, the technical terms with the non-professional people, you should be extra conscious. You have to explain them what it means in simple language, simple terms by which they can understand, right? So that whenever you are communicating with a non-professional person who doesn't belong to your field, do not use the jargon. Otherwise, it could lead to create a barrier in the process of communication. Then in semantics barriers, it doesn't pertain to the language or it doesn't also limited to the jargons or technical terms we are using, but it also leads to create the problem with the accent, right? As we live in India and it is said that language can change when you travel to 12 miles. So there is a change into the accent, and there is a change in some of the words as well. Okay, so we can understand what are the different accents can be used in the same language. And when accent is used in the same language, we could not understand sometimes some of the words, right? So most individuals carry the influence of the mother tongue on other languages they learn. Nowadays, when we are using a different language, for an example, take an example of English. In formal communication, mostly we use English as a language to communicate with someone. So when you are communicating in English language, people tend to use the accent they have in their mother tongue. So same manner we are speaking it, and the people are not understanding it, right? Even it could also lead to create a barrier when the foreigners are coming to India and they are talking in their accent, right? So sometimes due to the accent also we couldn't understand the messages, right? So the accent may be vary from region to region or country to country. Some examples are given here. Sometimes it may be difficult to understand the foreigners or American or British accent, right? Now we also have a problem here in India as well. A South Indian. Some of the times when the South Indian people tend to speak in English language, they are using the South Indian accent. So this is creating also to understand to create a barrier, right? For an example, I can give an example of Gujarati people also. Gujarati people do not pronounce hall word, H-double-L, hall as a hall. They call it whole, right? So that also create the barrier when he or she is talking to someone, right? So pronunciation can also lead to create a barrier when it comes to the communication, and this makes communication process as a tedious, right? And that also lead to create a barrier in the communication or the message in understanding the messages. Then apart from the physical, environmental and semantic barriers, we do have the psychological barriers also. Now psychological barriers are not easy to remove. We cannot understand someone's psychology. Sometimes it may be difficult to change the psychology of the people, or due to the psychology also they are creating the barrier, right? So when the psychological barriers are there, it's very difficult to remove. Let's see which are the psychological barriers are there in the process of communication. Psychological barriers are when the individual as the sender is sending wrong messages or at fault. As a sender, if you have a particular psychology about the situation, about the people, then you are imposing a barrier itself, right, into the process of communication. So that's known as psychological barrier. Psychological barriers stem from the individual's attitudes and habits. As I said it, whatever habit, attitude, thinking, emotions you have about those people and the situations, then you are imposing a barrier. Then each of us interpret the same information in different ways as our thinking varies from each other. Even the people who born and brought up in the same environment would also not have the same thinking. As you know that your sister and your brother couldn't think the same way as you are thinking, though you brought up in the same environment. So the first psychological barrier is the wrong assumptions. Whenever we try to communicate with anyone, it may be your seniors, juniors, people you know, people you don't know, we do have some assumptions. Based on the assumptions, we start to communicate. And that assumption can lead to the physical appearance and the body language, the attire that person have, right? And based on that, we do have a fixed notions about those people, and we try to communicate with them based on the assumptions we form, right? So when we have wrong assumptions, because the sender or doesn't receiver doesn't have adequate knowledge about each other, can also lead to create a barrier, and it also lead to create a barrier in the fixed mindset. So when we have a wrong assumption about the people, suppose if you are standing on the road and you are searching for the person who could provide you the guidance to reach a particular place, and you find 10 number of the people are standing there, but you will look first the physical appearance that person have, the body language and the attire. and then you try to communicate with that person. So it means that you do have a fixed notion about that person, and then you try to communicate. But that notion could be wrong, right? So sometimes the speaker does not realize the background, education, and the experiences can be different from person to person. And we apply the same formula to each other. Because of this, it could lead to create a barrier. For an example, suppose I have chosen an image here where you can see this is the doctor and this is the patient, and the doctor is prescribing a medicine to that person. He is holding a bottle here as a medicine bottle, and the doctor advised the patient that he has to take the medicine only SOS. Now look at this term. This is known as the wrong assumption about the people. So when doctor is talking about the SOS, the patient doesn't know the term, and the doctor has assumed that he knows the term very well, right? So what the interpretation of SOS would be? Can you guess? If you are coming to the doctor, he prescribe your medicine and ask you that you have to take this medicine only in SOS. What it means? Any guess you have? No? I can tell you the meaning of it, and you could also find it in the old phones. In the old mobile phones, you can find SOS messages. So the same meaning here and there also. SOS means in emergency. Sometimes the doctor will prescribe your medicine, which could be taken into emergency only. Normally, you do not need to take it, right? So when the doctor was communicating with the patient, he has a false assumption about the patient's knowledge, and that's why he told him to take the medicine only in SOS without explaining the term what SOS stands for. Now, as a patient, he has a responsibility to ask what is SOS. If he doesn't ask, it will lead to create a problem to take the medicine, right? So that is known as wrong assumption about the people. You assume something about them, but they are not like what you thought of or think of, right? So that's known as wrong assumptions. Then next barrier, which is known as variety of perceptions. So perception is nothing but the understanding we have about the people. Based on the communication we have with the person, we have a perception. We have a certain thinking, mindset about that person, and based on that, we try to communicate with that person. Okay? So when we think about the variety of perceptions, let's see what is it. We have fixed perception about the people, things based on our past experiences. So if the person you talk to, you have a communication with, have a company, and was fulfilling whatever you thought of about him or her, then we form the perception, right? And based on that, we do have the relationship with that person, right? But sometimes, similarly, every individual in organization perceives situation reality differently. It may be the same situation everybody is looking at, but everybody's interpretation would be different based on the perception he or she has. For an example, you could have the same friend, and when you are talking to him, you have a different perception, and your relatives, your family will have a different perception, right? So that perception also limits or creates a barrier in your understanding of the messages, right? So I could show you an image here. Can you guess the story of it? What it the story would be there based on the perception, the point we are learning here, or the barrier it will lead to create. Can anyone guess? Students, you should be awake. You have to respond. So already highlighted you show you that what is it? The story of the six blind men. Have you heard the story of the six blind men? Hello?
No, sir.
Please respond. Anyone? If you don't, I can tell you, but you have to first tell me. Have you know or have you ever heard or known the story of the six blind men? Because this
No,
leads to
sir.
perception.
No, sir.
Okay. At least respond so that I can understand you are awake. Okay. I have to check the connection, everything then. And I am skipping from the slideshow mode for that reason. Okay. So when it comes to the story of the six blind men, this leads to the perception. Even we don't see sometimes, but we do have a perception. For an example, whenever somebody is telling you a story, you've never heard of the terms. Even our mind has the capacity to interpret the things, and it will relate to the logical things, right? So that perception also leads to understand the messages effectively. For an example, when you watch the sci-fi movies, into the sci-fi movies, some of the logics which are made are illogical, but still we understand it because of the perception. We form some of the assumptions based on that. We try to understand the message. Even whichever painting you are looking at, whichever messages you are looking at, we try to interpret. The mind has a capacity to interpret it, and it interprets based on the previous knowledge it has about the same message. Now, this is the story of a six blind men. As those were the blind men, he couldn't see anything. And once they were sitting together and thought of, or just talk of, that they could perceive an elephant, right? So they all planned that, okay, we will go to the elephant and we'll see. They can't see. They perceive the elephant, what it will feel like, right? So they went to the elephant. Now everybody who is standing there as a six blind man, as you can see in the image, is touching different parts of the elephant, and they're just trying to understand what the elephant will look like. Now we'll start from behind here. This particular blind man is standing there and he's touching the tail of the elephant. He is telling the rest of the others that the elephant is just like a rope. Now this one who is standing beside him, touching the stomach of the elephant, he is telling that no, elephant is not like a rope, it's like a wall. Then the other third one who is standing at the feet of the elephant is telling the rest of them that no, elephant is like a trunk of tree. The other one who is touching the tooth of the elephant is telling that no, elephant is just like a sword, right? The other one who is touching the nose of the elephant is telling the rest of them that elephant is just like a snake. And the other one who is touching the ear of the elephant is telling them that elephant is just like a fan, right? A manual fan. So do you think that all of the six blind men who are trying to perceive the reality, they are there and everybody is looking at a different point of view, couldn't perceive what is the reality, right? Reality is different and what they perceive is different, right? So they have perception based on their understanding, what the experiences they have, right? But the reality is different. In the same way, sometimes we perceive the individuals and situations in a different way. Maybe the reality would be different, but whatever perception we have, we just made our understanding and confirm that this is what you perceive. But that the reality is different, right? So we do apply it in our communication with the people around us, and that's why it could also lead to create a barrier. Okay, so nobody was wrong there, but the reality was different, and what they perceived was different. Okay. Next, difference in background, as we talked about the background also previously. So when it comes to the background, people vary in terms of their education, culture, language, environment, age, financial status, etc. And all these factors can impact their background as well as the understanding of the messages, right? So our background plays a significant role in how we interpret the message. If you never experienced it, you cannot understand it or understand a little bit. But the people who know it very well will understand the same message in effective manner. So at times, something which is not experienced by us, it will be difficult for us to interpret. As you can see an example here. So this is the teacher went for a rock climbing adventure, and now he is telling to the village classmates, village students, that what he has experienced into the rock climbing adventure. And these students had never been to the rock climbing, and he is telling to them. Now, when he is telling to them, they will understand it a little bit because they have never experienced that particular background. But if you could have told it to the people who already have gone through that particular experiences, could have understood it better, right? So this is how, when based on the background of a one person, we need to try to communicate with him or her. If we don't understand the background, then the messages you are delivering will be a futile effort to just make him understandable, right? So he is telling them, while on a climb, sunglasses save you from the glare, and humor helps you to pull yourself. So this means while doing that particular activity, what is important, what is not. And these people don't know about the rock climbing, right? So they will not understand what is glare and what is humor, right? The glare, the meaning, they can understand it simply, but humor, what is humor? They have never seen it, right? So based on the understanding, they will interpret the message, and that message interpretation will be different or wrong. So you have to understand the background of that person, and then you can try to communicate it effectively. Okay. Then we need to also interpret the messages. When you are receiving the messages, sometimes we do the wrong interpretations. So let's see an example here, how the interpretation could be wrong, right? And these interpretations are based on the previous experiences we have. So suppose if you are working into the organization and you have returned from a business trip and you find that two of your colleagues are absent from your department. They do not turn up for the several days. Since there is a recession, you draw an inference that they have been laid off. The fact is that they have been promoted and sent to the other department. This is known as fact inference confusion. So we do have interpretations about our classmates also. If he is bunking the class, if any of the students bunking the classes and severely scolded by the faculty members, we form an interpretation that he is not going to continue the engineering. And if he remains absent for a month, then we just have an inference that they have left the college. But as those people will come back, we do have the interpretations as well. But when you try to communicate with that particular background, you are imposing wrong messages, and communication process will be not effective with those people, right? So what you have to do, you have to be not able to interpret the person unless you understand the situation he or she has faced. So first of all, try to understand the situation, and then you can have your interpretations based on the understanding, right? So inferences are more dramatic than the facts or reality, and for this reason they can give more scope for the gossip and rumors to spread. So maybe those students were having the health issues and they didn't turn up for the month, but all the class was in under impression that they left the college, right? So that is known as they are very dramatic, and gossiping should be there, and the wrong messages could be passed, right? And inferences supported by the facts are essential for professionals when they analyze material, solve problems, and plan procedures. So whenever you join to any organization and gain more experiences, you also tend to rely on the inferences or interpretations, because we cannot understand 100% to anyone, and you also couldn't have that much time to understand each one. And that's why we do have interpretations. Based on those interpretations, we interpret the facts. Sometimes we assume the facts, we analyze the things, and based on that we can take the decisions. But the interpretations are wrong, then the decisions also or the outcome could also be wrong, right? So try to understand the situation